From the very beginning, encyclopedias and Shakespeare scholars have led us to believe that the virtually unknown stage play, The Great Favourite, or The Duke of Lerma, printed in 1668, was written by Sir Robert Howard, as his name appears on the title page. This video will attempt to convince you, however, that the original play was actually authored by the true or real Shakespeare, not to be confused with William from Stratford. The play, its first mention and origin, can be found in a letter Toby Matthew was writing to Francis Bacon around 1620. Date has been erased, offering this enclosed paper to your sight concerning the Duke of Lerma, which will not, I think, be altogether unpleasing because it is full of particular circumstances. Matthew added a remarkable note, G. I have, out of a ragged hand in Spanish, translated it and accompanied it with some marginal notes for your lordship's greater ease. The strange text of the epistle to the reader concerning the play by the supposed author Robert Howard should have made anyone suspicious early on that something might be wrong with the authorship. Howard confesses that his editor, Mr. Herringman, had the desire to print it, even though he was concerned to let the world judge the subject matter of offence contained in it, to believe little of it mine. Howard's epistle continues, by thinking there was anything in it that was worth so ill-designed an envy, as to place it to another author, the others by continuing their displeasure towards me. For the subject, I came accidentally to write upon it, for a gentleman brought a play called The Duke of Lerma, desired me to peruse it. "80 years ago, Harvard professor Alfred Harbidge argued compellingly against attributing the Duke of Lerma to Robert Howard. In his 1940 paper, published in the Modern Language Review, Harbidge conducted a thorough stylistic analysis, concluding decisively that James Shirley, the author proposed at the time, could not have written the play. Instead, he identified John Ford as the only plausible and possible author. Consider, even though John Ford is by far a better author proposal, Professor Harbidge was not yet capable to imagine that an alleged contemporary poet, John Ford, belonged to a significant number of pseudonyms of true Shakespeare. In case of your detailed interest in the arguments for John Ford, click and reflect this video. Concerning John Ford, there has been, more recently, a significant controversy. In 1989, linguist Professor Donald Foster attributed a funeral elegy for Master William Peter, previously ascribed only to W.S., to William Shakespeare. The attribution received extensive press attention from the media. Later analyses by scholars Gilles Montserrat and Brian Vickers demonstrated Foster's attribution to be an error and that the true author was John Ford. This confusion was inevitable because both Foster and Montserrat were simultaneously right and wrong. They failed to recognize that the one singular true author, Marlowe as true Shakespeare, was using both of these pseudonyms, Ford and W.S. because of the permanent fundamental denial of any Shakespeare authorship question or issue, the mighty and amazing allusions to the destiny of the true Shakespeare Marlowe in the verse epos. A funeral elegy, at present ascribed to Ford, have gone unrecognized. You may study this in this video. Click link above. No one can reasonably expect an intelligent, discerning individual to believe or understand the motives behind why W.S. Shakespeare or John Ford would dedicate such a sophisticated and powerful poetic funeral elegy, printed only 19 days after the murder, to the brother John of an otherwise unknown William Peter, who was fatally stabbed in the head. The elegy gains meaning and can be interpreted as an allegorical self-portrait or parable, revealing to the world and his friends the tragic fate of the true author, echoing the rumoured fatal stabbing of true Shakespeare, Marlowe. Is further explanation or interpretation really needed? If one reflects on the deeper meaning of just a few selected following lines from the text. We read from line 494, "His singleness was such, so that he dies but once, but doubly lives, once in his proper self, then in his name, predestinated times, who all deprives, could never yet deprive him of the same, and had the genius which attended on him been possibilitated, to keep him safe." And some lines later, we read, "He was good, which wholly includes all excellence that can be displayed. He died in life, yet in his death he lives." Nobody can deny that the content of the funeral elegy aligns with the fate of Christopher Marlowe, suggesting that the anonymous author, W.S., was, in fact, the true Shakespeare, not the false one. John Ford was one of the many pseudonyms used by the real Shakespeare. A confusing, complex, unrecognized situation, a play, The Duke of Lerma, offered to Francis Bacon, as dedicated by Toby Matthew, as written by Robert Howard, as ascribed to John Ford. Consider, for true Shakespeare's Marlowe's concealed life situation, anyone should differentiate between A, his enforced changing pseudonyms, as a life-threatened poet W.S., as Ford, and many others like Drayton, Breton, Chapman, etc., and between B, his necessary incognito existence as a living person, Ledoux, Shelton, and finally Matthew. Be fully aware, Toby Matthew was not identical with the mentally ill, deceased son of the Archbishop of York, but he adopted its name as his incognito name. This knowledge, unfortunately, has not yet reached the mercilessly unimaginative Stratfordian expertise. Toby Matthew, Bacon called him his alter ego, is closely associated with the figure behind the true pseudonymous Shakespeare, alias Marlowe. His lesser-known literary connections to both Francis Bacon and Ben Jonson are elaborated in the following videos. Both videos should convey a previously little-known impression and reinforce the powerful influence of True Shakespeare alias Toby Matthew, as evident in his correspondence with Francis Bacon and in the literary works of Ben Jonson. Conclusive consequences of a complex video sequence. 1. The true author of the play, The Duke of Lerma, cannot have been Robert Howard. 2. The real author sent the play to Francis Bacon under the name Toby Matthew. 3. This Toby Matthew is not identical with the son of the Bishop of York. 4. He adopted that name from the mentally ill bishop's son for protecting his incognito existence. 5. The true Shakespeare must not be equated with any of the many pseudonyms he used, such as William Shakespeare of Stratford or John Ford. 6. The true Shakespeare was, in fact, the surviving poet genius Marlowe, forced into hiding.